And with no further ado, I want to bring to you the lady that loves to network and is a huge relationship builder. Please welcome our next speaker. Put your hands together and open your mics for Traci. Hello,
Oh, let's
Traci.
go. Yes, go Tracy,
Hello.
go Tracy. Yes,
Thank you, Sherelle, and
Tracy,
thank you, Dr. Lotus. Thank you all. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I am so excited to be here. This is my second year to be here. Thank you to Sherelle for doing this amazing event for caregivers. I know it's a lot of work. I know that she puts in a lot of time and effort and energy into it. So kudos to Sherelle. You know, technology is a blessing and a curse at times. You know, so we love it because it can connect us to people around the world, but at times it can be crazy. So thank you for all that you've done. And thank you to all the speakers here. I've learned so much from everybody. I'm going to actually take Veronica's phrase, go from scared to being prepared. I love that. One of the things that I've preached to people many times over the last 15 years is, you know, let's go from scared to being prepared. You know, having that philosophy really does help, because unfortunately, so many times people wake up and their life turns upside down in a moment's notice. And, you know, they're just going along with, you know, the soccer games and life and everything's all good. And then all of a sudden, life is different, and life is dramatically different, and it's never going to be the same again. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about transformation and acceptance, carrying through life. And that's basically what I wanted to talk about. You know, I've been in this field for a really long time. I am currently a caregiver to my 84-year-old mom who has Parkinson's and dementia. I took care of my dad until my dad passed away 2 years ago. Both of my siblings have passed, and I'm not married and have no kids, so it was only me. And dad didn't leave any money. It was a really, really tough journey through all of that. So I've gone through a lot of the tough times that caregivers can go through and live that. So I have a much more strong empathy than I ever even did before I went through all that. But, you know, one of the things that when I finally got into all of this space, even in a deeper level, you know, when people hear the word caregiver, they think, okay, well, somebody's basically, you know, just like sitting there watching somebody die. And I think we really need to redefine that word, because the reality is that, in my opinion, I really feel like we're caregivers throughout our lives. You know, when you're a child and you ask your mom and dad for like a puppy, you know, and they say, okay, we're going to get the puppy, but you've got to take care of the puppy. You know, you've got to walk the dog, you got to do all of that. And so you basically, in a essential way, you're basically becoming a caregiver for your animal. Well, when you get older and you get married, if your spouse breaks an arm, breaks a leg, you know, they're in a car accident, whatever, you become the caregiver for your spouse. Once you become a parent, you know, once you have a child, you are the caregiver for your child. And I've never been a parent, but I know even with my 84-year-old mom, she still considers her, she's the caregiver to me, you know, because I think once you're a parent, you're always a parent. I mean, no matter how old your child is, if they come to you and they need help, you're going to help them if you possibly can. And that's because you love them and you're a caregiver for them. And it doesn't mean if they're sick, or it's just they need help. So I think, you know, the reality is that we need to kind of redefine caregiving. And I think in order to understand that, there's three things that I wanted to kind of go over today, of just things that people really need to realize as they caregive through transitions. Because, you know, there's easier times in caregiving and there's harder times in caregiving. When I was 14 years old, I fell, and by a blow to the head, I ended up starting having seizures. And my family had no idea what was going on. I ended up in the hospital for 3 days. My parents and my older sister and younger brother were told that I either had a brain tumor or epilepsy. And at the time, um, that was scary to everybody because they didn't know what epilepsy even was, and brain tumor sounded really bad. So it was all bad, you know. And so the reality was that they ended up coming in 3 days later and basically telling my parents that I had epilepsy. And they said, hopefully I would grow out of it, but there was a possibility that I wouldn't. And I didn't. I still have it to this day. I still have to take medication every single day. If I don't take the medication, I absolutely will have grand mal seizures. And for the first 2 years that I had it, all through high school, I was having 2 and 3 seizures a day. You know, so my parents had to go through a lot of it. My whole family had to go through times when they weren't just, you know, my parents, they were my whole family was basically a caregiver. And so I think we need to understand that when you're in that space, whether you're the patient or whether you're the caregiver, you need to understand that patience is obviously needed. But for me, and I have always been, I was raised in a godly, God-fearing household. And I was raised, you know, that when times get tough, you look to God. And for me, one of the first things I tell people, you know, when they're going through difficult times is I'm like, you need to look to God and you need to pray and you need to go find a church family because they are going to help you and they are going to support you. You know, in the last 2 years, especially since it's just been mom and I, we've had 2 different churches that have really stepped out and really helped us in so many ways. And we could not have made it, honestly, if it had not been for them. And so I really strongly suggest, you know, it doesn't matter what your faith is, but if you can definitely step out and go and find a church support group, that is really going to help you. You do not want to do this walk alone. It is just too hard at times. It really is. And that kind of leads into my second point. My second point is really, you really want to find your tribe, you know, and I will say, especially after the last 2 years, you know, when you go through some really difficult times, you find out who your true friends are. And you find out, you know, who are more like acquaintances because, you know, you get to a space where you really need some help, you know, and it doesn't matter whether it's financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it may be, you know, you find out exactly who's going to be in your camp and who's going to be in your world. And you really do need a tribe. You know, and I agree with Veronica, you know, a doula is always a great resource. I worked for hospice for over 14 years. You know, hospice is a fantastic resource. Hospice, as long as the patient continues to decline, they can stay under hospice care. My dad was actually under hospice care for 2 full years. He had CHF and COPD, so you can do a lot of different things. It doesn't matter, but you need support. You know, it's ironic to me. I preached for years while I worked at hospice and even, you know, heard even when I got into the caregiving space and had my own business, you know, self-care, self-care, self-care. And all of a sudden when I got in it and I started taking care of my dad and my mom, and they were both sick, I completely forgot about me. I mean, it wasn't about me. It was all about my mom and my dad. And so it was really hard. And I was like, and somebody even said to me, Tracy, you do remember that you need to take care of yourself. And it's easy to preach that. It's easy to say, this is what you need to do, but it's much harder to implement. You know, you get consumed at times with your person and you forget about yourself. You know, you really do. But it is true. You really do. And you need good people around you to remind you of that and to say, hey, you know, you need to step back because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of it. And I mean, my mom actually has said that to me before. She's like, Trace, if anything happens to you, you know, I'm in trouble. You know, I need you to take care of yourself. One of the last things I would say too is you need to find, and other people have said it too, take note of all these resources that have been listed on this platform. Sherelle has gotten together a ton of fantastic resources. that you really need to tap into, the books that have been written, the services that are being offered by all these different people. Dr. Jennifer is amazing. Her and the colors I took a ton of notes on all the colors, because that's just amazing information. These are things that one of the many things I tell people is that people don't understand that they are going to need this information. Everybody thinks I can do it later. I can do advanced directives later. I can do all these things later. I know that I've got time. And, my sister got divorced from an abusive husband, had 2 children, and was 47 years old. I talked to her on a Wednesday night. And the next morning, on a Thursday morning at 10:30, she'd been hit by a bus. And she had a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. And she had no advance. And she had no idea. I mean, she didn't plan on dying. So she hadn't planned. And, it's just, you don't know. Every day, hospice has a saying of every day is a gift. And every day is a gift. And we need to look at life that way. And that's why I love what she said, go from scared to prepared. You really need to prepare. It doesn't mean that you have to, this is what I tell people too, it doesn't mean you have to talk about death and dying and all of that kind of stuff every day, but sit down and at least make a plan. At least leave some information so that when and if something happens, for the people that are going to be left, that are going to have to deal with all the crazy, leave a plan of what they can do, and what you want them to do. You may have very definitive decisions or ideas about what you want done or what you don't want done or whatever. And if that's the case, then they need to know that information. It doesn't have to be, something, down and depressing, but the reality is that, like, again, like Veronica even said, death is going to come. It comes to us all. You are not getting away from this. It's kind of like taxes. You are not getting away from this. So the reality is that since none of us are getting away from it, and it's going to happen to every one of us, and none of us know when our time is up, none of us know if tomorrow will come, then go ahead and take care of it now for the sake of your loved ones, because it really can be a huge, huge differentiator. The last thing I just wanted to say is, like I say, with the resources, I actually work with a company called Odessa Connect. And Odessa Connect basically was created specifically for seniors and for anyone with disabled family members. And it basically turns your TV into a giant iPad. It's literally what it does. And it's awesome. The remote control, it's patented, and it literally only has like 11 buttons on it. So you no longer have, like my mother used to, always hit the input or the HDMI, and it drove me crazy. And so there's no longer any of that kind of problems. You can do video conferences with your family. So if my mom lived in Portland, Oregon, and I lived here in Florida, and I had my kids here and I wanted my mom to see Christmas on TV, she could. And so it makes it easier for sight. So if people have a problem with seeing, they can see it on their big screen TV. If they have a problem with hearing, they can hear it. They can hear it better because they can turn it up louder. You can send photos to the TV. It'll restore it. It'll store it. It's a very easy setup. It's a monthly subscription for just like $30 a month. So it's very, very inexpensive. There's a QR code in the chat. If anybody wants to take a look at it, you can go to the website, or you can connect with me. I will be happy to talk to anybody. I do think it's been a godsend for me and my mom. I've been able to call and video chat with my mom when I have to go out of town for work. It's also been much easier for her to work the TV when I'm not at home, so she can use it a lot easier. So it has been really, really great for us. But like I say, my 3 takeaways would be, if you are on a caregiving journey of any kind, and like I say, I really do believe we're all on a caregiving journey pretty much throughout our whole life in some capacity. make sure that you lean into some kind of church support. Find God in a tribe somewhere within that support. Also find the people that are really going to have your back, no matter what. They're going to have your back and they're going to be there for you because you're going to need them. You're going to have your really dark days and you're going to need them. And then, like I say, find multiple resources. Sherelle has got some great resources that she has listed here in this summit, and definitely tap into all of these people. They're all amazing people, and they all have some great things. So thank you again, Sherelle. Thank you for letting me speak, and I really, really appreciate the time and the opportunity.